We welcome you all for our second episode of this podcast, made to teach you Indian economy. You are sure to pick up some information when you listen to this podcast. Let us start by explaining Indian economy 1950 to 1990. On the eve of independence, Indian economy was completely undeveloped. After 200 years of British rule and their exploitative policies, India finally got freedom on 15th August 1947. Central problems of an economy. First, what to produce. It involves deciding the final combination of goods and services to be produced. It involves selection of goods and services and the quantity of each that the economy should produce. How to produce. It involves deciding the technique of production. That is, whether select goods be produced with more labor and less capital, known as labor intensive technique, or with more capital and less labor, known as capital intensive technique. Third, for whom to produce. It involves deciding the distribution of output among people, that is, it involves selection of the category of people who will ultimately consume the goods.
Indian economic system. After the freedom, leaders of independent India like Jawaharlal Nehru were confused with regards to economic system to be followed in India. Some leaders were in favor of socialist economy. However, in a democratic country like India, complete dilution of private ownership was not possible. Capitalized economic system did not appeal to Jawaharlal Nehru, our first prime minister, as under this system there would be less chance of improvement in quality of life of major of people. As a result, mixed economy was adopted by the Indian economy. In this view, India would be socialist society with a strong public sector but also with a private property and democracy. Economic planning. After adopting the mixed economic system, the next important step for the government was to revive the poor, backward and stagnant economy inherited from British rule. First, for the development of Indian economy, it was necessary for government to plan for economy known as economic planning. Second, the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948, the directive principles of Indian Constitution, assigned the leading role to public sector. Private sector was also encouraged to be the part of plan efforts. Third, to make economic planning effective, the Government of India set up Planning Commission in 1950 under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Fourth, the purpose of commission was to carefully assess the human and physical resources of the country and to prepare a plan of effective use of resources. Fifth, the Planning Commission fixed the planning period at 5 years, which began an era of 5-year plans.
Goals of 5-year plans. The 5-year plans have been concerned with the removal of economic backwardness of the country and to make India a developed economy. The 5-year plans have also taken care to ensure that the weaker sections of the population benefit the economic process of the country. The first 5-year plan was launched by our Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in the Parliament. It was launched for a period starting from 1st April 1951 and ending on 31st March 1956. Each 5-year plan listed the basic goals of India's development, which served as the guiding principles of Indian planning. These basic goals are growth, modernization, self-reliance, and equity. Growth. The stagnation during the British rule forced the planners to make economic growth as the first and the foremost objective of Indian plans. Growth refers to increase in the country's capacity to produce the output of goods and surround within the country. Growth implies either a larger stock of productive capital or a larger size of supporting services like transport and banking, or an increase in the efficiency of productive capital and services. A good indicator of economic growth in the language of economics is steady increase in the gross domestic product (GDP). By 1990, the share of the service sector was 40.959%, more than that of agriculture or industry. This phenomenon of growing share of the service sector was accelerated in the post-1991 period, which marked the beginning of globalization in the country.
Indian planners have always recognized the need of modernization of the society to raise the standard of living of people. Modernization include adoption of new technology. Modernization aims to increase the production of goods and service through use of new technology. For example, a farmer can increase the output on the farm by using new seed varieties, instead of using the old ones. Similarly, a factor can increase output by using a new type of machine. Second, change in social outlook. Modernization also required change in social outlook, such as gender empowerment or providing equal rights to women. A society will be more civilized and prosperous if it will make use of the talents of women in the workplace.
Agriculture. We have learned that there was neither growth nor equity in the agricultural sector during the colonial rule. At the time of independence, the land tenure system was characterized by intermediaries like zamindars who merely collected rent from the actual tillers of the soil. The low productivity of the agricultural sector forced India to import food from United States of America. The agricultural sector accounted for the largest share of workforce with approximately 70 to 75%. So agricultural development was focused right from the first 5-year plan. Now let's discuss about the various problems of agriculture. The first one was low productivity. Indian agricultural sector was known for its low productivity. Lack of knowledge was responsible for stagnation in this sector. The next one was disguised unemployment. It refers to a state in which more people are engaged in work than are really needed. There was very high incidence of disguised unemployment in the sector during 1950 and 1990. The third one was high dependency on rainfall. Due to poor agricultural techniques, farmers depended largely on rainfall. There was minimum growth of this sector in the year that receives the least rainfall. The next one was subsistence farming. It is a practice of growing crops only for one's use without any surplus for trade. There was very high incidence of subsistence farming. The next one was outdated technology. There were many obsolete technologies and harvesting machines. Harvesting was generally done manually and was tedious. The next one was conflicts between tenants and landlords. Farmers were often a part of critical contract that bound them to their landlords. Landlords used to extract huge amount of interest from farmers and deprived them of their necessities. The last reason was small land holdings. Most of the land holdings of the farmers were small. Small land holdings is a major hindrance in the process of agricultural growth, as farming can be carried out by only labor intensive techniques. That is, use of machines become difficult. Moreover, farmers use their produce more for their own use rather for sale in the market.
Critical appraisal of industrial development. The achievement of India's industrial sector during the first 7-year plans are impressive indeed. The proportion of GDP contributed by industrial sector increased in the period from 11.8% in 1950 to 51 to 24.6% in 1990 to 91. This rise in the industry's share of GDP is an important indicator of development. The 6% annual growth rate of the industrial sector during the period is also admirable. Indian industry was no longer restricted to cotton, textile, and jute. It also included engineering goods and a wide range of consumer goods. The industrial sector became well diversified by 1990, largely due to the public sector. The promotion of small scale industries gave opportunities to people with small capital to get into business. New investment opportunities helped in generating more employment. It promoted growth with equity. Protection from foreign competition enabled the development of indigenous industries in the areas of electronics and automobile sectors, which otherwise could not have developed. However, this protection had two drawbacks. Inward looking trade strategy. Our policies were inward oriented, and so we failed to develop a strong export sector. Lack of competition. Due to restriction on imports, some domestic producers made no sincere efforts to improve the quality of their goods, and it forced the Indian consumers to purchase whatever is produced by them. The domestic industries failed to achieve international standards of product quality. According to some economists, we should protect our producers from foreign competition as long as the rich nations continue to do so. Licensing policy helped the government to monitor and control the industrial production. However, excessive regulation by the government created two difficulties. Misuse. It was misused by industrial houses. Some big industrialists would get a license not for starting a new firm but to prevent competitors from starting new firms. Time consuming. Thus, cumbersome and complex procedure for obtaining license was very time consuming. A lot of time was spent by industrialists in trying to obtain a license. Public sector made a remarkable contribution by creating a strong industrial base, developing infrastructure, and promoting development of backward areas. However, the public sector continued to monopolize in certain non-essential areas which could be well handled by the private sector. For example, telecommunication, hotel industries, etc. As a result, precious fund of public sector channelized into areas where private sector could have been easily engaged. Many public sector also incurred huge losses but continued to function because of difficulty in closing a government undertaking. The monopoly of public sector in such essential areas was criticized by many scholars. According to them, the role of public sector should be limited to strategic areas and private sector should be given the opportunity for other non-essential areas. According to some economists, public sector is not meant for earning profits but to promote the welfare of the nation. So they should be evaluated on the basis of their contribution to welfare of the people and not to the profit they earn.
Conclusion. The progress of the Indian economy in the three sectors can be summarized as under. In agriculture sector, India became self-sufficient in food production due to the Green Revolution. Land reforms resulted in abolition of zamindari system. In industrial sector, the industries became far more diversified compared to the situation at independence. However, excessive government regulation prevented their growth. Many economists were dissatisfied with the performance of public sector enterprises. In trade sector, our policies were inward oriented, so we failed to develop a strong exports sector. The domestic producers were protected against foreign competition in order to gain self-reliance. However, this did not give them the incentive to improve the quality of food that they produced. The need for reform of economic policy was widely felt in the context of changing global economic scenario. So the new economic policy was initiated in 1991 to make our economy more self-sufficient.
We are very thankful of you being a patient listener. We would like you to join us in the next episode of this podcast.